I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in my third year of seminary and had begun serving as the student associate pastor at Northwest Christian Church, a Disciples of Christ congregation in Columbus, Ohio. I was trying to balance working 20 hours plus a week at the church, driving over an hour each way to attend classes at the seminary, as well as trying to be a wife and mother of 2 children, by this time age 8 and 11. I was often exhausted, but at the same time absolutely loving what I was doing and becoming. Perhaps out of my own sense of need, or perhaps even then sensing that something was missing in the way we did worship, I remember saying to Bill, my senior pastor, "It seems so many times like people come to church hungry and they leave starved. It seems like we focus so much on the ministry Christ calls us to do that we forget about feeding them so they will be able to do it." I don't remember where the conversation went from there, but I do know that somewhere buried in my comment was the trust, the belief, the faith that what Jesus did so long ago as he fed the multitudes, God still seeks to do in your life and mine. Several weeks ago, when I began laying out the plans for worship for the summer and I read the gospel that was suggested for this Sunday, I had the overwhelming sense that what we needed to focus on in this worship experience was the way in which the power of God's love can feed our spirits. Perhaps it was because of the way Matthew tells the story, setting it in the context of the time when Jesus had just received the news that his cousin John, the one we call John the Baptist, had been executed by Herod. And when Jesus heard this, Matthew says, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and he cured their sick. Jesus was not at that moment seeking out crowds to teach them, or heal them, or call them, or to do anything else with them. At that moment, at the moment in which this feeding takes place, Jesus is himself empty. His heart aches, his spirit is heavy, and he turns to the one he knows can heal his hurting and his hunger. But before he can utter one prayer or drink in one moment of solitude, before he can sink into the arms of love, the crowds find him. They are hungry. They are empty. They are hurting. They are in need of healing, and he has compassion on them, our text says. And in his compassion, I can well imagine him drawing in a deep breath, uttering a silent prayer, and trusting that somehow, some way, all that he needed would be given to him as he reached out to heal and to feed the multitude. Now, most of the time when I've preached on this passage of Scripture or one of the various accounts of feeding the multitudes, of which there are many in the Gospels, I have focused on Jesus' call to the disciples to join him in feeding, or on what seems like the promise that when we give what we have to Jesus, he will take it and bless it and empower it so that it is enough to feed a hungry world. But this time, way back several weeks ago, it seemed like the focus needed to be on our hunger and on our need for the bread of life. Little did I know, all those weeks ago when I voiced this sense to the worship team and we designed this service, that I would come to this day so aware of my own emptiness and the power of divine love, to feed our deepest hungers and meet our deepest needs. Many of you know that I have spent the last week with 9 of our own youth, 38 7th and 8th graders from other congregations, and 17 or so adult counselors and teachers at the Illinois Conference Confirmation Camp. My responsibilities for the week included teaching a class every day about what worship is, how we worship, the elements of worship, and the like, and then leading the camp into an experience of worship. In the design of the camp, this took place at the wonderful hour in which all of us are really awake, 9:15 p.m. So during the day, I had various other responsibilities, among them being the camp photographer and preparing the camp video. So Sunday afternoon, when one of the teachers had still not arrived, our camp director, Gail, said to me, do you think maybe you'd be able to come up with something for the 4 Christian living classes tomorrow? If Reverend Francina doesn't make it? Well, I said, I guess, maybe, never thinking for a moment that Reverend Francina wouldn't make it. Then Sunday evening, when Gail said she'd spoken with Francina, and Francina did indeed intend to come and that she would be there by class time tomorrow morning, I breathed a sigh of relief and went about my responsibilities for the day. But Monday morning arrived, and a little before 8 a.m., Gail came to me and said, Francina isn't here, and class starts at 8:30. I think you're going to have to teach your class. After the initial panic, a lesson quickly took shape in my mind, and I gathered what I needed and headed down to Dupree where she taught her class to try and give shape to the sliver of an idea that had lodged itself in my brain. Then at 8:15 a.m., Gail came in with this look on her face, and she said, there's a phone message for you. It's an emergency. Someone in your congregation has died. Now, knowing that I hadn't left anyone sick enough to die, I panicked and took the note and ran up the hill to the office to call Eileen, who had left the message. I found out that it was Sally's husband, John, and called Sally, and we talked for a few minutes. By the time I got off the phone, it was 8:29, and I needed to meet 12 7th and 8th graders at 8:30. Thankfully, before the second class began, Francina arrived and took over for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. But that was Monday morning. I still had to meet with Sally and Jenny and young John, plan the funeral, get things to Pat so she could run off the bulletins, talk with Janet about the music, and carry out the various responsibilities that I had agreed to for camp and with our own youth.